Pesach is the time of Zman Cheruseinu, time of our freedom. It's referred to as the Gula. God redeemed us from Egypt. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the first of the 10 Commandments. Asher tzitzicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I'm your God who took you out of Egypt. The Torah tells us regarding the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayilech ish mi beis Levi, a man went from the house of Levi, Vayikach es bas Levi, and he took the daughter of Levi. And Chazal tell us who's the man from the house of Levi. This is Amram, the father of Moshe. Who's the daughter of Levi? This is Yocheved, the daughter of Levi. She's the bas Levi. So the male from the house of Levi went and took the daughter of Levi. Vataru Isha, Vatelid ben Bain. She became pregnant. She gave birth to a son. And because Moshe Rabbeinu was born premature, and although there was a decree that the male children should be killed, should be thrown into the Nile, she was able to hide him until the end of the third trimester, because they only checked on the women after the husbands went back to the wives, because they didn't suspect it would be a premature birth. Vaterso ki tofu. When he was born, she saw he was tov. He was good. So Rashi cites Chazal. What does it mean? How did she see he was good? Kishenolad nismale abayis kulo ora. When he was born, the house was fully illuminated. This was the Shekhinah. The divine presence was with him. Factually, as Chazal tell us, that Miriam, the daughter of Amram and Yocheved, as a child who was 6 years old, a little before 6, she already prophesied that her mother will give birth to Moshe Shel Yisrael, to the Redeemer of Israel. So therefore, this child was going to be a special child. You have to be somebody of very special spiritual dimension to be the one to take Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, out of Egypt. And ultimately, what is the objective of the redemption? To come to Sinai, that we should become God's chosen people, which is the objective of creation, to become the Am Hashem, the Goy Kodosh, the holy people. So she prophesied that her mother would be the one to give birth to Moshe Shel Yisrael, the Redeemer of Israel. So a number of things have to be discussed here. Firstly, before this happened, the Torah tells us that there was a decree that all male children should be killed, because the astrologers of Egypt had said that they saw in the stars that the Redeemer of Israel will be judged with water. His end ultimately will come as a result of water. And he was going to be born. Initially, they didn't know if he was a Jew or a non-Jew, but they assumed he was a Jew. So therefore, they gave a decree that all male children have to be killed. So initially, he had summoned the Jewish midwives. Shem Achas. One's name was Shifra, the other was Pua. Shifra was the head midwife who would beautify the children, who was Yocheved, and Pua was Miriam. She would calm the child after the child was born. They were the head midwives. And he summoned them, and he gave them the order as the king of Egypt, that if a male child is born, he has to be killed on the birth stool. The Torah tells us the midwives, they feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt had spoken to them. It says Diber in the official, the formal context. Not only did they not kill the children, the males, they fed them and they took care of them to make sure they survived the birth. So why were there multitudes and legions of male children born? which guaranteed the future of the Jewish people, because Yocheved, the mother, and Miriam, before they feared God, they did not do as the king of Egypt, not as Paro, as the king of Egypt had dictated to them. Speak sequentially speaking. So first they go, due to Yocheved, mainly, she's the mother. There is a Jewish people. She will not for any reason allow, God forbid, that should not be a future. There should not be a Klal Yisrael. Because if there are no males, there's no future. Because they feared God. After this, Vayelech Ishmi Beis Levi, a man unidentified from the house of Levi goes and marries the daughter of Levi. Amram Yocheved. Yocheved is the daughter of Levi. Who does she give birth to? The Redeemer of Israel. Why did she merit, firstly, that she should give birth to the Redeemer of Israel? This is the most special human being, Jew ever lived. Human being and Jew, who ever walked the face of the earth. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Kibul Torah V'Sinai. He had such a capacity of spirituality. He was the conduit to receive the Torah from God. He had studied directly from God to transmit it to Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people. He ascended to heaven 40 days and 40 nights. Lechem lo ochel mayim lo shosa. Lived like an angel. No physical sustenance. No less than the angel. She merited to have such a son. When did she merit the son? Sequentially. After she demonstrated and sacrificed, because she never knew what the consequence of her defiance would be. But it was Tirena Hamyalda says Elokim. Therefore, they did not listen to what the king of Egypt had dictated to them. She merited, firstly, to have the Redeemer of Israel. And who's Moshe? Moshe is Shoko Keneged Israel. He's the equivalent of the whole Jewish people. Because through her sacrifice, which was rooted in her fear of God, they did not kill the males. And therefore, there was a Jewish people. Due to that, she merited to have the most special human being gifted to her, as we'll discuss in a moment, who's the equivalent of the whole Jewish people. That's the measure for measure. Hashem says, you, through your sacrifice, you guarantee a Jewish people, you will have a son who will be the equivalent of the Jewish people. Plus much more. He will be the one to receive the Torah. He will be the one to disseminate and to transmit the Torah. Masorah. Moshe Kibbutz Torah Masorah. He gave it over. That's the transmission. The Maral asks a question. I mean, if factually the person, the Ishmi Beis Levi is Amram, and the Bas Levi is Yocheved, say, Vayelech Amram, from the house of Levi, V'yikach, as Yocheved Bas Levi. And why is the Torah concealing the parentage over here? Factually, later the Torah reveals to us, Amram and Yocheved were the parents of Moshe. So why in this context, Batar, she conceived, became pregnant, and she gave birth? Why is the Torah in this context concealing it? For what reason? So the Maral of Prague explains that the Gvurus Hashem, in his work, Gvurus Hashem, very often, when one merits a child, whatever level of spirituality he has, more or less, it's due to the merits of the parents. The characteristics of the parents. Moshe was at a level, regardless of who you are, no one's merit is sufficient to have such a child. It's unrelated to who you are. If it would say, Vayelech Amram v'yikach Yocheved Bas Levi, Amram went and took Yocheved, the daughter of Levi, I'd say, and she conceived and she gave birth to Moshe. What would you say? It's because he's Amram, who was the leading sage of the Jewish people, and she was Yocheved, who was daughter of Levi. Due to that, they merited to have the child. And it's not because he's Amram. It has to do with his lineage and her lineage. It has nothing to do with lineage. They merited to have the child. Begins there, ends there. Of course, they were special. The child had to be born. Why did you merit that that's one-of-a-kind child, which there was never such a person ever born into existence? Why did you merit? Because you had a schus. But it's unrelated to who you are in terms of your lineage. Unrelated to your lineage. Therefore, the Torah conceals in this context, at this moment, the parentage of who the father is, who the mother is, for that reason. This is literally a gift of God. It's not something you earned, but rather it's gifted to you because he's special. But the characteristics surpass and transcend anything that Amram or Yocheved could have been. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. He was born with the Shechina. They saw he was good. This Mali Kol Habayis Kol Or, the house was fully illuminated with the presence of a divine presence. We find later, when the daughter of Paro was bathing in the Nile, and as the Talmud tells us, she immersed herself in the Nile to cleanse herself from the idolatry of her father. She saw this box, she opens the box, and she sees something. She sees something in the box besides a lad. The voice, although he was an infant, his voice was like a lad. So Rashi, according to one interpretation, says she saw the Shechina with him. The Bas Paro, this woman who just converted to monotheism, she saw the Shechina. She was able to appreciate what was there. This is at the age of 3 months. No more than that. No one merits that kind of child due to who the parent is. The child had to be born into existence. Who merited to have that one-of-a-kind of a child? Yocheved and Miriam. But again, his dimension of being is unrelated to the dimension of Yocheved and Amram are. Unrelated. Therefore, the Torah conceals the parentage. Vayelech ish mi beis Levi, v'tikach bas Levi, for that reason. The Torah tells us that after Moshe became an adult, he chose to go out to see how his brothers were faring. He knew they were in bondage. He knew he was a Jew. V'yigdol Moshe v'yitzer lechov. Moshe matured, and he went out to his brothers. Vayar b'sivlosam, and he wanted to appreciate their suffering. V'yarish mitzri makish ivri be'echov. He sees an Egyptian man beating a Jew, his brother. So Rashi cites Chazal. Why was he beating the Jew? Malkei V'rodei, who's smiting him. Ubalo shel Shlomis bas Divri Yehoyo. This was the husband of Shlomis bas Divri. Who was she? V'noseh v'einav bo. And he actually had his eye on her. He was attracted to her as a woman. Ubalayla hamido v'otzimi beso. Middle of the night, he woke the husband and sent him out to do some chore elsewhere. He went in to the house. It was dark. And he cohabited with his wife. She didn't even know. She thought it was her husband. When the husband came back later, he realized something happened. When the Egyptian realized that the husband was aware, had a sense of what happened, he was beating him all day, literally beating him. So what does Moshe do? He sees the Egyptian beating the Jew. He turns in every direction, and he sees that there's no lineage, nothing good will come out of this man. Ultimately, that nobody will ever convert till the end of time from his progeny. Vayach es ha-Mitzri. He killed the Egyptian, and he hit him in the sand. Okay, this is the story. Why was she? There were millions of Jewish women over this period of time. She was the only Jewish woman ever to be defiled. No other Jewish woman was defiled. Over here, the commentator on Rashi, the Sifsei Chachamim, regarding there was a person who had actually blasphemed God, and that was her son. that was the son of this Egyptian. He had no share because, again, a share in the tribes, it was all based on the paternal. So he had no share. So over there, when it speaks about Shlomis Bas Divri, why does the Torah reveal the woman who was defiled? The Torah over there, here, it's not really clear what happened. We need Chazal to elucidate what happened. But later, the Torah in Vayikra, the Chumash Vayikra over there, it identifies the woman who was raped, and that was her son. Why does the Torah identify the woman? So over there, Rashi cites Chazal, the Midrash. Shvochan Shel Yisrael. This is the praiseworthiness of the Jewish people. Shepirsum lona akosav lazu. The Torah is making it public knowledge. Loma shehi levada hoisa zona. Referring to if she was a rape victim, why she's zona? She's like, she was a woman who was, she flirted. She was a woman who had an interest in this kind of relationship. She was a zona. So she was the only, we're talking millions of women. The women had such a degree of modesty and virtue, they would never consider ever having interest in any man other than their own husbands. This woman was the only woman, it's to make known who she was. She was the only one who was a zona. Zona means a harlot. Now, how do we see she was a harlot? Firstly, why did he pick on her? The question is, why did he notice her? Why was she called Shlomis Bas Divri? Whenever people would walk, she'd stay at her doorway and she'd say, "Good morning, how are you doing?" So the Egyptian walked by, this taskmaster. She gave him the salutation. So therefore, what did she do? She exposed herself. She caused herself to be noticed. But you realize, if you notice, you could create a problem for yourself. At a certain level, this was considered flirtatious. And ultimately, what did it lead to? That she should be raped. So she was the cause of her own defilement. She was the only woman. It's unheard of. You have millions and millions of women throughout this period of time. There was Shisha Bekeres Echot. 6 children were born in each birth. This is the only woman. And as Chazal tell us, it was the merit of Sari Menu that she would not allow herself to be defiled by Paro when she was taken by Paro and Avram went to Egypt, even though she would have been the queen and she would have had power. Chas v'sholom, that Sari Menu should compromise who she is, her modesty, and allow this to be breached under no circumstance. In her merit, that she did not allow herself to be defiled, all her granddaughters merited divine protection. None of them were defiled. Because Shlomis Bas Divri, she had acted immodestly, and she attracted this, she brought it upon herself. But every other woman not. So let's talk. Moshe Rabbeinu is one of a kind of a Jew. He's born, they saw he was Tov, the Shekhinah was with him. Bas Paro, the daughter of Paro, when she sees him floating in the basket, and now she opens the basket, she sees the Shekhinah with him. She sees the divine presence, special. He's raised in the palace, and he's more beloved than anything to Paro, as if he's his grandchild. He's going out to see, after he becomes an adult, how his brothers are faring. He sees this incident, an Egyptian beating a Jew because he had raped his wife. Regardless if she initiated it or not, he kills him. What is the consequence of this? The Torah tells us. Vayetze b'yom hasheni. He went out the second day, again to see how his brothers are faring. V'hinei shnei anoshim ivrim nitzim. 2 Jews are fighting. They're quarreling. V'yomer l'rosha lo masaker reyecho. Says to one of them, evil one, why are you hitting your fellow? He raised his hand to strike his fellow. So they responded very strongly to him. V'yomer, misomcha li'ish. Who appointed you to be that person of status? Sar v'shofet, a minister or a judge, olenu. Harageni ato omer, kasher raktas hamitzri. Are you going to kill us the way you killed the Egyptian? So Moshe already realized from that statement, that comment, Vayira Moshe. Moshe was fearful. Vayomar Achinu Dadov. It's already known, meaning he suspected immediately that these people would inform on him that what? That he killed the Egyptian, and as a result that he has to flee from Egypt. In fact, he did have to flee. And he fled till he was 80 years old. Now, let's understand something. Moshe Rabbeinu being the most spiritual person ever to come into existence. What was the cause of his fleeing from Egypt? To go into a location of spiritual desolation, no support system, all by himself, except for God. This incident, because he killed the Egyptian. Dosra Aviram, they informed on him. So they did a terrible thing. At this moment, the Jewish people have an advocate in the palace, the most beloved member of Paro's family. He can advocate on behalf of the Jewish people. Now, because of an incident, what happened, Moshe evidently had to react or respond the way he responded. To kill the Egyptian wasn't a reaction. It was a decision. He passed judgment. It was a verdict of the court, and he killed him. He couldn't act differently, which caused him to flee. Somebody of such special value to the Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people. Why did Hashem allow at this moment this incident should arise that Moshe should have to kill the Egyptian and cause him to flee? Why? Why? Wouldn't have have greater value if Hashem wouldn't have had this action to take place, and Moshe wouldn't have had to kill him, and Moshe could have stayed in Egypt and been the support system and been the advocate and assisted his brothers to alleviate their plight to whatever degree he could. But evidently, God's wisdom decreed that the protection should not be offered to this woman. Therefore, the Egyptian was able to act on his free will and defile the Jewish woman, which is equivalent of adultery, and he deserved to be killed. And Moshe, understanding that, had no choice but to kill him. Moshe was the equivalent of Sanhedrin. He was the equivalent of 70 judges. His ruling was he must die. And that's what he said. Are you our judge? Be so sar v'shofit olenu. Since when are you a judge? Moshe was a judge. Within the context of judge, he was a judge. It wasn't a reaction. It was a judgment. According to one interpretation, he killed him with the Shem HaMeforosh. With the name of God, enunciating the name of Hashem, he was able to destroy him, to kill him with this. But why didn't God protect this woman that she should not be defiled for the sake of the Jewish people? And Moshe wouldn't have had to flee. So we see something interesting. This is the first time since the Jews in Egypt there's a breach in modesty. A woman was defiled, but why was she defiled? Because she was shlomis bas divri. Because she made certain advances herself. She initiated this. If there's a breach in modesty, there's a breach in the Kedushas Yisrael. There's a breach in the sanctity of the Jewish people. If there's a breach, it has a consequence. You know what the consequence is? But what about the ramifications? Doesn't make a difference. The ramification is, this actually, if there's any degree of vacuum within spirituality, the vacuum has a repercussion. The repercussion is Moshe has to leave. So therefore, she will be raped. Moshe will come upon the Egyptian who defiled her. Moshe must choose to kill him. Then Moshe must flee. That's what it is. When there's the evil has the upper hand to any degree, there's a diminishment of spirituality. Moshe was a representation of that special level of spirituality. Therefore, he had to flee Egypt. Where did he flee to? He flew into the oblivion. He fled to there's a question. Before he arrived in Midian, he had to go to Ethiopia, to Cush. And then eventually, he came to Midian. He came to where he eventually spent till he returned to Egypt. But you understand, whatever God does, it's for the best. For the best. Firstly, every opportunity. Why was Moshe chosen to be the Mekabel Torah. Why was Moshe chosen to be the one to receive the Torah? Torah is what Shlomo Melech quantifies Torah. Emes kenev al timkor. Acquire truth. Don't sell truth. Acquire it. Judgment, the Gemara tells us, is not necessarily the truth. Within judgment, you could have rachmim. Hashem has rachmim. Within his judgment is mercy. But something which is unadulterated truth, it is either truthful or it's not truthful. There's no compromise position. Is something kosher or is it not kosher? Is it stealing or is it not stealing? Do you have the right? Don't you have the right? That's emes. Emes is unadulterated truth. When Moshe killed the Egyptian, what was he actualizing? It wasn't so simple, because he could have justified not killing him at that moment. Maybe delay it. With all the reasons we gave. If I killed the Egyptian, I understand I may have to flee Egypt. Look at the consequences. Look at the loss to the Klal Yisrael. Here I'm an invaluable asset in the palace of Paro. If I kill him, I kill the Egyptian, I may have to flee. He could have justified not killing him. But a person who lives and internalizes truth on an absolute level is black and white. There's no justification. There's no rationalization here. You killed the Egyptian. So what is he developing? He's actualizing his attribute of truth. He flees to Midian. He notices 3 shepherdesses, women. They're shepherding the flocks of their father. And all of a sudden they're being attacked by the male shepherds. Moshe is a fugitive. He fled Egypt. The tentacles of Paro reach out even to Midian. He sees this injustice, these innocent, helpless women being attacked. What does he do? Immediately, he jumps into the fray. He fights them off. He waters the flocks of these women. They go home. You're a fugitive. It's important to remain concealed. One doesn't compromise truth. If your attribute is truth, you live truth. There's no such thing as consequence. You don't think about consequences. Because Moshe continuously demonstrated and actualized that attribute of truth. Therefore, he was qualified to be the conduit to receive the ultimate truth. To engage with the one who, his signet, what's the signet of God is truth, and Torah is what? Is truth. So all these various experiences he had, although initially they may have been painful, they had to flee. He didn't know where he was fleeing to. Whatever it may have been. But what was the end result? The end result was he was the one who merited to be the Mekabel Torah, to receive the Torah, which is the ultimate truth, which is Torah Hashem, which is God's Torah. So initially there may have been a vacuum which caused him to flee. But ultimately, Koma David Rachman lo Tavovet. But what was the end result? All these experiences of pain and loneliness and being in solitude all by yourself, what did it bring to? It brought to the ultimate. That's firstly. There's a midrash, which we once mentioned. Goes on a verse, a posuk, in Koheles. Shlomo says, "V'olakim yivakesh es nirdof." God desires or seeks out the pursued. He favors the pursued. So he gives many examples throughout history. It starts with Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel. Hevel was pursued by Cain. Therefore, God accepted his sacrifice and turned away from the sacrifice of Cain. But we're going to go all the way down, skip to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe nirdaf ne Paro. Moshe was pursued by Paro. When it became known to Paro that he had killed the Egyptian, he had to flee Egypt. So what did Moshe become? A fugitive. So Moshe became the nirdaf. And what do we say? Shlomo says, Elokim yivakesh nirdaf. God seeks out the pursued one. And what does the pasuk say? Where do we see that he was favored and he was sought by God? Lulei Moshe bechiro. There's a verse in Tehillim when we sinned with the Chet Egel. It says God accepted the supplications of Moshe, and he says, Salachti, I forgive them. God wanted to destroy us. So it says, why did he accept the supplications of Moshe? Lulei Moshe bechiro. Because Moshe was his chosen. But why was he his chosen? Why was he so special? Because he was a nirdaf. Because Elokim Yevakesh as nirdaf, God desires and seeks out the pursued. Through the experience of being pursued, Moshe became the Bechiro. He became the chosen of God. So what was the value? What was the value of fleeing from Egypt? What was the value of being a fugitive? You come, as I once explained, a pursuit doesn't mean to say you need help. That means you've exhausted every avenue to rely upon, and you come to a realization, there's only God. When you come to that realization, so this experience of having to flee from Egypt, before you were in the palace of the king, you were considered the adopted, most beloved grandchild of Paro. In a moment, it all vanished. It all evaporated. You don't have your parents. You don't have the Jewish people. You don't have your stepmother, the mother who adopted you. You don't have your grandfather. You're fleeing into the oblivion. What do I have? All I have is God. When a person comes to that realization, all he has, the one to help him, is only Hashem. It's Elokim Yivakesh Nirdaf. So what was the value? It's true. Because there was a breach in the modesty of Klal Yisrael, the first and last, that vacuum caused Moshe. The most spiritual person. He was displaced. But what was the value of the displacement? It was the ultimate value. That the reason why there's a Klal Yisrael, why was his tefillah accepted, and Hashem Salachti Kidvorecho, was because he was nirdaf. Chazal tell us, Midrash tells us, that why did we merit redemption? We were pagans in Egypt. So the Midrash tells us because the Jews had three attributes, or three things that they had done which was considered something special, despite the fact that they were pagans. Firstly, it was Lo Shinu Shmam. They retained the Jewish names. You think a person, as a slave, as a chattel, you lose your identity. We are who we are. We retain our Jewish names. We're not ashamed. We're not going into incognito and just disappearing. What language do we speak? Lo shinu l'shonim. They didn't change their language. Lo shinu levusham. They didn't change their attire. We are Jews. We identify as Jews. We're not ashamed of it. We're proud of it, although we're slaves. That's our circumstance. But who are we? We are Jews. Therefore, they retain the identity through name, language, and attire. There's another. So why did we merit redemption? In the merit of these three things. There's a fourth opinion. The fourth reason, because B'nei Noshim Tzidkonios. The righteous women. Who were the righteous women in Egypt? The men, the spared. The men had no interest in procreating. They gave up. What's the point? We're here forever. We should have children to raise them. They should be slaves and be beaten and killed, and to meet quotas which are inhumane. What do we have to bring a new generation into this existence? They have no interest in procreating. The women says, we will be redeemed. Despite the hopelessness of their situation, the women never despaired. We will be redeemed. There will be a future. So what did they do? They went out with mirrors into the field, with food and drink and hot water, and they would take the mirror and they would look in the mirror together with their husbands. And they would say to the husbands, who's more beautiful? Who's more attractive, me or you? And through this, they aroused the husbands that they should have an interest, and they would actually cohabit in the fields. And through this, they conceived children, and that was the basis for the future of the Jewish people. So the mirrors, it says that when they built the Mishkan, the women, they donated these mirrors. They donated the mirrors for the building of the Mishkan. So the Torah tells us, Vayas Esakior. He made the laver. This is the receptacle which the Kohen would ritualize his hands and feet before he did the avoda in the Mishkan, the service in the Mishkan. Vayas Esakior ha-nechoshes veskano nechoshes. The laver was made of copper, and the base was made of copper. What material? What was it made from? The maros hatzovos. With the mirrors which are tzovos. What's tzovos? So Rashi cites Chazal. Yisrael hoyu biyod and maros. The Jewish women, they had mirrors. Sharos ben kshemis kashtos. They would beautify themselves. When they would beautify themselves, they'd look in the mirror. Vav osa lo ikvu melohavi linvas hamishkan. Even this, which was so important for a woman to have a mirror, even that they donated. Moes Moshe ben. Moshe detested it. He didn't want to accept it. He rejected the donation. A woman, her beauty, what is it made for? For the Yetzer Hara. To entice a man to engage in cohabitation. Hashem says to Moshe, I want you to accept these mirrors. Ki elu chavivin olai min hakol. These mirrors to me are more beloved than any other donation that was given to the Mishkan. Why? Because through these mirrors, they were able to establish legions of Jews. Legions. Rabos Mitzrayim. Why? When their husbands were fatigued and worn down through this backbreaking work, they would take food and drink, and they would actually feed the husbands. They were so tired and worn, they'd have to feed their husbands. They would take these mirrors. She and herself, they would look at one another in the mirror. They would see each other together in the mirror as a couple. And she would say words, and those words to draw him close to her. I'm more pleasant than you are. They would actually arouse their husbands, and they would conceive, and they would give birth in the fields. It's under the citron tree, the esrog tree, I aroused you. This was the mirrors which brought about legions. So what was the value of the hope? The women didn't despair. It wasn't only because they had bitochon, because they had faith in God that Hashem said after so many years you're going to be redeemed. But what did that faith bring? There was a critical mass we had to come to be able to come to Sinai. We needed 600,000 men above the age of 20 to stand at Sinai to receive the Torah. If the men wouldn't have been interested in procreating, they wouldn't have been in Sinai. Because unless you meet that criteria of mass number, the Torah is not going to be given. The objective of creation is Bereshis Bar Elokim. For the sake of Bereshis, the chosen, I created this world. The Jewish people and Torah Shnikras Bereshis. So the women, due to their faith in God, that ultimately there is a future. It's not bondage forever. We will be redeemed. As was said to Avram Avinu, I will take them out. They procreated. Because they procreated, therefore there's a Klal Yisrael. That's why if there's a Jewish people and you have those legions, it's not they had children, they were legions of children. Marsat Sovos, you have those legions, you have sufficient numbers. You have sufficient numbers, we could talk about a Kabbalah Satorah. So who's responsible for the Kabbalah Satorah? The women. Because if the women would allow the men to wallow and be totally consumed and subsumed by their depression and despair, there would have never been a Torah given at Sinai. Because there wouldn't have been a Jewish people. This is the worthiness of the women. This is the Noshim Tzidkon. It's not just they're righteous. You did the will of God. The women were pagans like the men were pagans. But you're a pagan. It's irrelevant. But in terms, they still had the faith. So it could be. Could be. We say initially they made a commitment. They're going to retain their names. They're going to retain their language, which is Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language, and they retire. Al-Busham, they did not change their attire. It was Jewish attire. Let me ask a question. If we're here forever, to be condemned and doomed in slavery, which is destructive slavery, do I have to keep my name? Who am I fooling? What am I wasting my time? It's irrelevant who I'm called, what I speak, and what I look like. So even that they retained it is an indication to a degree that there is a future. But who gave them that sense that there's going to be a future? Even though initially when they said that, that's when the bondage started. But it intensified. So after a while, they should have let go. The answer is, the women gave their husbands that level of encouragement. Because the women had that level of faith, never to despair, we raise our children, you have a Jewish name, you speak the language, and I dress you like a Jew. Not that you should look like an Egyptian. So that goes into the Noshim Tzidkonios, in merit of the righteous women. I asked the question. The Gemara tells us, Misha nichnas Adar Mavri b'simcha. When the month of Adar begins, a Jew is supposed to increase various level of happiness. Simcha. Misha nichnas Av. It's the most tragic month on the Jewish calendar. Mamatim b'simcha. We lessen our joy. But Adar, which is the ultimate, we were at the brink of annihilation because of the decree of Lahashbid La'arug La'abed. We're supposed to be decimated, destroyed, annihilated. Minar Vatzokein, from youth to the elder, Noshim V'taf, women and children. And the last moment, God overturned that decree. It's a month of Simcha. Okay? What about Nisan? Nisan in the Torah is counted as the first month of the year. That's Chodesh HaRishon. Why is it called Chodesh HaRishon? Because we redeemed. We count always from the month of Nisan. In terms of the year beginning, the year begins in Tishrei. But in terms of whenever we count months, the months are counted from the month of Nisan, because that's when we left Egypt. You know what it means? We were at the level of the 49th level of spiritual impurity. If we would have stayed one moment longer, we would have gone into the oblivion. It wouldn't have been a comeback. We could have never recovered. Because Hashem took us out at that exact moment, the spiritual ascent began. The spiritual rehabilitation began. So if that's the case, when the month of Nisan begins, we should start celebrating. But you say, it didn't happen until Sivan. The Torah was given at Sivan. That's when we became the Am HaNivchar, we became the chosen people, we became the Goy Kodosh. Okay, so we won't ask the question. Misha nichnas Nisan marbim b'simcha. Misha nichnas Sivan marbim b'simcha. Okay? When the third month of the year begins, marbim b'simcha. Bereshis bara Elokim. B'shvil Yisrael shenikus reisis. B'shvil Torah shenikus reisis. The Jewish people became a Jewish people. We had relevance to Torah. We became what we call mitzvah va'oser. We became of obligation, and the Torah was given. So the objective of creation was met when? The third month of the year. Not only that, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah cites a verse that until we find by creation, it says, every day it says, it was evening, it was morning, it was the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. comes to the sixth day, it says, V'yerev Yivoka Yom Hashishi. It was the sixth day. What's the the? So Chazal tell us, the Midrash tells us, the world was in abeyance until the sixth day of Sivan. On the sixth day of Sivan, God put a mountain over our heads and said, I'll give you an ultimatum. You accept the Torah, it will be good for you. The world continues. If not, Shamteit Kvoraschem. You bury it under the mountain. The world reverts back to nothingness. So when did the world take on a level of permanence? In Sivan, we became a Jewish people. We received the Torah. The objective of creation was met. What's life and death? Life and death. What's life but without God? Without being a Klal Yisrael? Seems to be difficult. Now, we read in the Megillah, and we wouldn't know this only because Mordechai and Esther revealed it. Kimu v'kiblu. Now, there's a question in the Gemara that Scripture, was it written with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration or not? Were they divinely inspired? Because there's many facts and information in the Megillah, you couldn't have known it unless God revealed it. Otherwise, how do you know? Do I know what's in somebody else's mind, in somebody else's heart? And the many things in the Megillah written, the Gemara dismisses everything. There's no proof. So the Gemara says, how do we know it was written with divine inspiration, the Megillah? Because we read in the Megillah, it says, Kimu v'kiblu. What does the meaning, Kimu v'kiblu? They fulfilled and they accepted. Kimu masha kiblu kvar. At Sinai, we accepted the Torah, but it was under duress. God put a mountain over our heads. As the Gemara tells us, Modo Rabba Lo Raisa, there's a disclaimer. Sinai, we have a disclaimer. God, you can't fully fault us if we fail. You forced us into it. You put a mountain over our heads. Did we have a choice? If we wanted to live, we accept it, because otherwise we would have died. But Purim, Kimu v'kiblu, was Kabbalah mi'avo. It was a reaffirmation of the acceptance of Torah out of love. That's a much more advanced level. That's the proof. But how do we know? Do we know Kimu v'kiblu? In Shemayim, God says they re-accepted it. It's a new understanding. It's a more advanced level of what? Of relationship. Kabbalah mi'avo. Of course, what facilitated the Kabbalah mi'avo? Of course, we saw and understood what we meant to God. We could have become extinct at that moment. If the decree wouldn't have been overturned at that last moment, God would not allow it. Achashverosh ruled the world supreme. There was nowhere to escape to. The Jews already said it's over. Mordechai galvanized them, 3 days of fasting and tshuva. V'napachu. God turns the tables. Haman is hanged. The Amalekites were given permission to destroy them. It's not to be believed. And it's not in the era of miracles any longer. This is concealed in nature. What does that show? God shows us that God will not allow us to be destroyed. That shows God's love for us. Because we realized His love for us, therefore, Kimu v'kiblu. It was a reaffirmation of love. We accepted out of love. Adar is the month that there was a Kabbalah mi'avo. So we're not talking about living or dying. That we lived, that facilitated the Kabbalah mi'avo. That caused it. Nisan, we left Egypt. But what was the objective? Why did God redeem us from Egypt? Just to be free? The only true free man is the one who engages in Torah study. So he said, okay, what about Sivan? We became the Amanivchar, we became the Goy Kodosh, the chosen people, the holy people. We became everything. But what was the Kabbalah? What kind of acceptance was it? God had to put a mountain over our heads. It's not a qualitative acceptance. So, When is the month a month of the ultimate level of joy? Ador. Not because we were saved. The saving us, the last moment that only opened our eyes of what we mean to God. You mean something to God to such a point, He will not allow it to happen. That evoked within us an understanding and a feeling, we accept the Torah mi'ado. That's why it's Mishnichus Arba Bar B'Simcha. Ador. Sivan, that's not the case. And Nisan is not the case. Nisan is not the receiving of Torah. At Sivan, which is that, but at what level did we receive it? But Ador, which is Kabbalah mi'avo, that's the ultimate level. We had that special opportunity. So we're holding a different level. Just to end, a lot of things have to be reconciled. There was the covenant between the parts with Avraham Avinu. He said, Ger Yezaracho, your children will be strangers, Beretz Lo Lohem, in a land which is not theirs. Va'avodum v'inamosam, they will be enslaved, they will be afflicted. Va'goy ha'shevod donanochi, the nation which will enslave them, they will be judged. Va'achar kach yetzu b'rechush gadol, then they will leave, they will go out with great wealth. So the Gula, the redemption, was forecasted during the covenant between the parts. So why did we leave Egypt? Because God promised Avraham Avinu, after we put in the years of bondage and so on and so forth, we're leaving Egypt. That's why we left Egypt. But yet Chazal tell us, why did we merit to leave Egypt? We merited to leave Egypt because we did not change our names, we did not change our language, and because we kept our Jewish attire. Or Noshim Tzidkonios. It says explicit. After so many years, your children are leaving Egypt. But yet it says it seems to be that's not enough. We had to have these other realities in place to merit redemption. It says B'schus, Noshim Tzidkonios, B'schus, Shmom, L'shonim, Albusham. They didn't change their attire. That's one question. Another question, and this is something we read in the Haggadah, we quote a pasuk in Yechezkel. Yechezkel says, I saw you at Erum ve'Eryoth. You are naked, you are devoid of spirituality. Ve'erech mispossesses b'damoyich. I saw you wallowing in your bloods, b'damai chayi, b'damai chayi. Through your blood you will live, through your blood you will live. This is said at every bris. So Chazal thought, what do you mean? What's the bloods? Does it say the bloods? That to merit redemption, Hashem had to give us two mitzvahs. The mitzvah, firstly, of circumcision. They didn't circumcise themselves in Egypt. And the mitzvah of slaughtering the Paschal Lamb, the Korban Pesach. Because we were devoid, we were naked of spirituality, we had to have some spiritual worth to merit redemption. So that gave us our spiritual worth. Is it the promise of Bein Absorim? Is it that we retained our Jewish names, language, and dress? Is it the righteous women? Or is it what? Because we performed the mitzvah of circumcision and Pesach, and the Paschal Lamb. What was it? Evidently, they're all true. So how do we reconcile all three things to somehow coalesce all three, that they're all necessary? So my understanding is, the promise to Avraham Avinu was that your children, after so many years, will leave Egypt. But who are your children? So therefore, there is a dynamic in place that if you meet certain criteria, you're able to activate that dynamic. What do you need to activate the dynamic? You have to be a people who identify as Jews. Now, to have a sense of your Jewishness, your heritage, that's name, language, dress. But factually, you may identify as a Jew, but what worthiness? You still have to be worthy. That's the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah. Milah, that's mitzvah b'demoyach chai b'demoyach chai. Through the bloods, through the dam milah, the blood of the circumcision, and the dam Pesach, you will live. So there are three things. First, you have to establish the dynamic in the spiritual realm. Now you have to activate the dynamic. That dynamic has to have relevance to a people to be brought into this existence. But if there's no people, what relevance does it have to this existence? We have a people. But even though you have a people that be worthy, the worthiness is the performance of the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah. And as a result of the mitzvah of the blood of the Milah, the blood of Pesach, we merit the redemption to ultimately to become the Am Hashem.